Welcome to Stubby Talks Transformation, the podcast where we explore what change really looks like inside organizations, talking with the business leaders who make change happen. I'm delighted today to be joined by Sola Osinoiki, who is the director of Josh Leadership. Sola, welcome. Great to have you on board.
Hey, thank you, Dave. Thank you for having me. And I'm glad to be on this podcast.
Thank you. You are an incredible human, and we're going to jump into that a little bit. So, Sola, can you just explain to us your role, for one, as a director at Josh Leadership, but what else you do?
All right. Thank you. So Josh Leadership basically has two dimensions. We have the Josh Leadership Academy, where we do coaching and mentoring. And then we have the Josh Leadership Group, where we do consulting. So my kind of role across both organizations is consulting, because I have a bit of consulting in my background. And before starting Josh Leadership, I was a HR transformation technology expert. So worked with companies like Accenture, PricewaterhouseCoopers, GSK, HSBC. So I've been in that transformation space. And then I do a lot of coaching, mentoring, which started off originally as pro bono work, but now it's now a line of money. In addition to that, I'm also an author. So I've written a couple of career books and other books. So that's another piece of the Josh group, if you like. And then finally, I do a lot of advisory for startups across Africa and across Europe. So so that's the multi-dimensional side of me.
And you're also an angel investor, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yes. So you keep forgetting the bits, but I lump that into the advisory piece. Yeah, so advisory plus angel investing.
Brilliant. So there's a lot of hats that you wear in what you do. You said you've moved between industry, consulting, investing, coaching. What do you think the thread is that kind of connects your entire career?
I think the thread that has connected my entire career from being a programmer many years ago to what I do now is people. It's the people side of the work. It's helping people to become best versions of themselves. It's helping people to deliver the best products they can deliver. And whether I'm doing a consulting gig or I'm coaching and mentoring or doing leadership development, at the end of the day, it's that interaction with people that many years ago, when I started as a programmer and I realized that I was the worst programmer in the room, but I had the best customer engagement. So I could actually go talk to the customers and say to them, what exactly do you want this program to do? Whereas the programmer just gets on a program. And so actually I was getting better results because I was actually giving the customer exactly what they wanted. So this is way before UI, UX. So I think I learned from then that if you just talk to the customer, if you find out what the customer really wants, you can actually deliver what they want, and it will be first the right time as much as possible, because you're giving them exactly what they want, rather than you're a great programmer and you've gone to program something. So I think that's where it started for me. And I think I've just continued that, whether it's in consulting, whether it's mentoring and coaching, keeping your eye on the people you're trying to impact and create opportunity for.
Yeah, that's a really great point you make. I think for me, that kind of customer experience, that skill set sometimes comes quite naturally to people. It can be taught, but I think the behaviors and the ambitions of people, with technical skills, can be taught and learned. But I think those human skills sometimes, it's the want to learn and grow and that develop that bit we're going to come on to, I'm sure. But that kind of the ability to understand people and customers and what they want, that helps you along the way, doesn't it? So just on that, when people hear the term leadership coaching, what do you think they most often misunderstand about the depth of the work that goes into it?
I think a lot of people just think leadership coaching is show me what the next step is and I'll just take it. Right? I think that's what a lot of people think, but actually I'll segue and then come back to the question. The segue is, I do this leadership development for a very large organization in Nigeria, and one of the classes I teach is emotional intelligence. There's a quote in that class from David Goldman that says that to see people that perform at their highest performance level, I think it's 98% of the time, it's not because of their technical ability or the technical know-how, it's because of their ability to be emotionally intelligent, their ability to understand people, to engage with people. And actually, that's where you see the high performance come to bear. And I think part of what people confuse leadership coaching is more like, you're just going to guide me to get my best results. But actually, leadership coaching, from my point of view, is how do we help you be a better leader? How do we help you become more aware of your surroundings? How do you become more emotionally intelligent, more aware of the people around you, more aware of the inevitable consequences of one decision you make, right? So you might be gregarious or loud because that's how you are, but then that intimidates your team. And I think it's only in real good leadership, executive coaching, that you're made to put the mirror up and reflection and see, how do I make people feel? And we know the stats, it says that people don't leave organizations, they leave managers. And so
Mm.
be that manager that people don't want to leave, or the manager that when you leave, people want to follow you. So I had a manager like that, that when she left, a year later, I decided to leave, and guess where I went to work? Exactly where she was. So people follow people, people find people inspiring. I think what we're trying to do in our practice is to help people become more than the job they do, but actually become somebody who inspires beyond your day job.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
long answer. But yeah, it's that inspirational piece, that transformational piece, that giving back, that it's more than just a job.
Totally, totally. I think for me as well, it's kind of moving away from just changing a job title. It's actually changing how you lead.
Yeah,
That it might be progression, it might be a sideways step, but there's always developments you can take in how you lead people. And you've just hit the nail on the head there. People follow people.
yeah,
If you've built up a connection with someone that is trusted and they leave, you are likely to follow them. And
yeah,
you are case in point with that. But at the
yeah,
same time, if you've got someone that doesn't give you that trust and doesn't give you that care, like you say, you're going to leave them rather than the organization sometimes. And that's
exactly.
probably why you see a lot of people in bigger organizations shuffle in between that same big umbrella, because there's different opportunities, different departments to get the person they want. So they're staying with the company that they sort of share the values with
Yeah.
potentially, but there's just changing that manager. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, and I have a personal. I know you want to go to the next question, but I have
Yeah,
a
go on.
personal story to connect to that. So
Yeah.
I joined GlaxoSmithKline as an analyst programmer, but by the time I left 7 years later, I'd done 5 different roles because I loved the organization so much. And so the opportunity to kind of just navigate that, go from programming to business analysis to project management to program management, it was like you love the company and you don't want to leave the company, and the company is giving you these opportunities to grow. I think that's the key. That's how you make people connected to organizations, connected to leaders that they're following.
Yeah. Yeah, really great story that. And I think that for me is you can have that progression inside one organization and then leverage all of that learning somewhere else, can't you? And you can apply all of that learning. That's really, really key. Your sweet spot is helping leaders trying to break through a glass ceiling. So I guess what are the most common ceiling types that you see today?
So the most common feeling types are, sexism, like so females. So a lot of my clients are females who are they've worked really hard, but they can't seem to break the glass ceiling because they just don't know the language of the boardroom or the language of the C-suite. So teaching them that. Some of it is also racial, and having been in those situations myself, where you're the only black guy in the room because you're that level of leadership, that's the color you see in the room. I always reflect back to say, actually, for me, through my career, when I was in the industry, I didn't have a black person I could look up to. It was always so I was like, so trying to fill that gap and trying to help people navigate that, because sometimes what we know is helpful. It kind of gives you a bit more context, but nevertheless, I have got to where I've got to. So there's the the sex element, gender, race, and then expertise. So sometimes people don't realize that actually I have the expertise to be a great programmer, but I don't actually have the expertise to be a great leader.
Mm.
A lot of people don't know the difference between being a leader and being a manager. So you have a lot of managers who are trying to become leaders, and that's a misnomer. Leadership is a gift, or leadership is a what's the right word for it, right? It's a style, it's a opportunity, and managing is an opportunity. And sometimes a leader can manage and lead, but it's very hard for a manager just to lead, right? So you have to learn the art of leadership to be a good leader, and there's an art of managing to be a good manager. So that's why you can take a programmer who's done really well and you make him a manager, and he sucks at it because he needs extra training to be a good manager, because it's a different skill set to being a manager. And the penny dropped for me when I was in PwC, where I was a manager and managing a lot of stuff, and then they made me a leader. right? So I was made a leader before I really understood what it was, and I spectacularly failed. And it took me being mentored and coached to understand the difference between being a manager, doing your job, as to opposed to leading and thinking company first rather
Yeah.
than my department first or me first.
Yeah. Yeah. Really interesting. And it's sad that discrimination plays a massive part in this. But what form of pushback does that take in real life? And how do you help people navigate that without them losing themselves?
So I think part of it comes from understanding the cultural nuances. So a lot of the times people, we I think now in the 2020s, right, we're now more aware of unconscious bias, right? So that's now, you know, 20 years ago, nobody would have used that word, right? So there's conscious bias and there's unconscious bias. So actually, sometimes I would naturally do something. I would naturally flinch when somebody comes into the room. I would naturally be worried when I'm in a dark room and somebody appears. Right? So these are unconscious. You're not intentionally doing it, but that unconscious bias comes from conditioning, comes from background, comes from things you're comfortable with. And this is not a podcast about race, but I just give you an example when sometimes I've entered into rooms and people think I'm the IT guy to fix whereas I'm actually the owner of the meeting, right? So that's just unconscious. It's not intentional. It's just what your mind kind of understands. So I think the tools that I try to encourage people is to understand the cultural nuances. And I think my first book recommendation today would be to go and read Aaron Mack Culture Map, and really gives you an understanding that this is way beyond even color, right? What an American would do in a room and what a British person would do in a room, even though they're both Caucasian, is very, very different just because of the cultural context. And so it's more subtle than just color of skin or race. It's actually, there's nuances to it. And I think me going to work in Germany really opened my eyes to how culturally diverse Europe really is, right? So you enter a room and someone from France, there's someone from Germany, there's somebody from Portugal, and there's somebody from Spain. And the interactions and the expectations are already dynamically different, even though you're dealing with maybe potentially one color of skin. So I think what I try and help people do is look beyond race and look to culture and understand cultural nuances. And then through that, find a way to put your best foot forward. And that starts with, self-leadership, knowing
Mm.
yourself, understanding yourself, self-regulation, self-control. How do you respond? Responding rather than reacting. You could be reactive because somebody doesn't like you or doesn't welcome you into the room or doesn't expect you to show any level of intelligence in a particular domain. So you're not reacting to that, but rather taking your time. Then, if you ever come across that rule, Mississippi 1, Mississippi 2, Mississippi
Yeah.
3,
Yeah.
to calm yourself down and then respond. And so
Yeah.
teaching people how to respond rather
Mm.
than reacting is one of the key tools. Because at the end of the day, they say it and, probably change it with the word of, I don't know how, okay, we're 14 minutes in before I started the word AI. But in the world of AI, it's something that one needs to self-mastery, right? That's the key, because everything else is changing so fast. And so that's
Mm.
the one thing you can control. You can't control how people react to you, but you can control your response. And that's why I try and train people and educate them. And then using my own life experiences, like, how did I navigate that? How did I navigate to become a senior vice president in a multinational organization and be in the top 100? So sharing from my own experiences. So that's why what I do is more coaching, mentoring, rather than purely just coaching.
Really interesting. And you've mentioned there staying relevant with things like AI. Now you've kind of taken that self mastery to another level with AI, haven't you?
Explain. Sorry.
So you mentioned when we first spoke that you've gone through that AI sort of self learning,
Yeah,
and you've
yeah, yeah,
kind of
yeah, 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 yeah. So, yeah,
you've gone into that in more detail. I guess to help, so you can help other people, right?
exactly. Yes, exactly. So I just came back from Lagos where I did a founders roundtable where we were talking about AI and the impact of AI and how AI, particularly when I'm working with founders, and I tell them that, look, you're not going to get money because you come to me and say, I've got AI inside, because I'm assuming it's AI inside. I don't know if you remember back in the day when we had Intel, and then they say Intel inside. Like, it was almost like we have to tell you, but now we assume every computer has some form of Intel inside, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think I think that's it. So where which, you have to recognize that the world is evolving around you, and, roles are changing. And having been a programmer before, I kind of understand the technical side, but actually realizing that actually there's what we call no code, right? Where you're actually not right. You don't even have to understand a simple line of code. You just have to prompt the engine to do what it needs to do. So yeah, so self-leadership, again, self-mastery, understanding what you need to understand what you need to become good at your job, not necessarily being the person doing the coding. And I learned that also from one of the organizations I worked with, where almost 7 years ago, they started doing AI training for every senior leader. So anybody that was a senior leader in the organization, you had to go for like a couple of weeks of AI training. So this was way before ChatGPT, and they just saw it on the horizon that AI was coming, and it was
Yeah.
almost like this cultural awareness of, what does it mean to have AI in HR? What does it mean to have AI in finance? What does it mean to have AI in production? And just learning from 7 years ago, and they've continued to do that. So now they have a huge AI department, etc. So yeah, so there is definitely that need for us to go out there and learn, and not just learn the good things, but also the negative things also. So I was being chatted up the other day to come and do a talk about responsible AI and how we can be responsible around how we use AI. And there's so much happening in the world. Like, I mean, if we just switch to AI, like there's stories upon stories. Every day there's a new story, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting as well, because I think AI, like you said, a positive and negative side of things. People
Yeah.
can look at that going, I can use this to really double down on my position and make myself stronger. And some people look at that and go, well, AI is going to take my job and
Yeah.
I'm going to become obsolete.
Yeah.
So how easy is that for you to navigate people through that? And I guess the advice might be, do you reinvent yourself inside the same organization, or do you move to a different environment? Does that depend on the person as well?
I think a lot of it depends on the person, depends on the organization. So part of what I do in my leadership coaching is I say to people, it's like, you're not in isolation of your organization. So if you don't understand what your organization does, how do you know whether you can navigate within that organization? So a lot of people just come to their job, do their job, and get on with it. But actually, I got one of the best advices I got from one of my former line managers. We were just in the final, she'd made an offer, and I said, okay, I'm going to give you the best thing you can read to prepare you for the job. I was like, what's that? And she sent me the annual report of the company. She said, go read it. I mean, when I say go read it, I don't mean flick. I mean, read it. Like,
Yeah.
understand how we make money, understand what our challenges are, understand the company. Because when you understand the company, you can be a great leader in the organization. And I think that's what people miss. People miss that. What is the bigger picture? What is the
Mm.
big picture? What is happening in this organization? Where are we going directionally? And can I see how AI can come into this? So if you're reading the annual reports and the company is saying, we're going to lead with AI, that gives you energy to go to your line manager or go to your team or go to your organization and say, hey, it's a company statement. Okay. It might not be real right now where we are in the work we do, right? As we're pushing manual files right now, but the idea and the direction is that we're going AI. So I think that's my first point, is like, understand your company and the company dynamics, understand your boss, right? So I talk about in one of my books, I talk about the idea of understanding what makes your boss tick. Because if you don't understand what makes them tick, it has an influence on you. So if your boss is like, you know what, I'm close to retirement, I'm not looking for any fancy AI or something, let's just keep doing the job and keep it quiet, that tells you that you have a ceiling, right? Because they're not interested in pushing things forward. They're just interested in marking time till they
Mm.
get their retirement check. So understanding those dynamics will help you decide either you stay in that team. You might love the organization, understand the organization, but the team you're in is now going to be limited because they're not looking to move forward in that. And that could happen in an organization that is really, really good and dynamic, but you could have a team leader that could limit your personal growth. Understanding those nuances, understanding the company, understanding your team, understanding your manager, and then maybe the last bit, which is what we probably repeated a few times, self-mastery. So understanding yourself. What do you want out of life? If
Yeah.
you have the energy right now, or you just had a baby, and you're like, well, I don't want to rock the boat. I just want to kind of, just keep things stable for now. So those things are really important. Hope
Yeah.
that answers your question.
Yeah, no,
Just
it
kind of
does,
give
and
it,
I
yeah,
think it's led me to another question, and I think it's, you can love the company, right, but still disagree with decisions, and the culture isn't perfect, but you're kind of there to help transform it and take it on that journey, right?
yeah, yeah. So, and that's the challenge, right? We've talked about leadership, but then the dimensions of leadership, right? So You could be coming and just lead because the grass is green and everybody's okay. But you could also come in and be a leader, and it's more around transformation. So you're
Mm.
leading into a change. And I've been in those positions before where you come in and it's like, hey, you're inheriting a mess. Now organize it. Right. So that's transformation, right? And there's habits that people have, there's culture that people have, and there's this how it's always been done. And if you do any other way, we're not going to hit payroll. And then you have to take that command and say, no, we're going to do it a different way, and we're not going to miss payroll. And so now the gauge is not whether what you're doing is right or wrong. The gauge is let's see if he misses payroll. Right. So you sound so I think that helps and brings that dynamic. So transformational leadership is a little bit harder, right? And again, you have to know whether you can do it. So some people are asked to come and do transformational leadership and then they realize they can't do it. There's a young man in America right now who's been transforming organizations. He's just been going from one currently that Red Lobster, I think, and he's just he's very young, but he's just transforming organizations, changing their turnover. And he was saying in an interview that it takes depth of character and a lot of self belief, and then trust in the team that we can
Yeah.
get with the line.
Yeah, totally. I think from my point of view as well,
Yeah,
when I kind of go in transforming cultures, processes, customer experiences, you can sometimes see that not that leadership is the problem, but there are challenges, should we say, where leadership are kind of saying, you guys go and do it. It's not our problem. And you almost want leaders to go, hands up, we'll show our vulnerabilities. We need to get better and we need you guys to help us along that way. And that's what I love is when leaders are very open and honest about that, saying that, yeah, we haven't got everything right. And yeah, okay, some of it is to blame on us. But at the same time, we want to bring you on that journey with us rather than cause more harm, maybe. And I think that's where I love what I do because it's what you love, what you do as well. It's people based. If you're having a direct impact on people, that's what gives me a buzz out of what I do.
yeah. And I'll tell you a quick story because as you said that, something came to my mind. So I won't name them, but there was a client that we had and they were having problems with bringing transformational change within the organization. And it was mainly because the call center was designed in such a way that it was siloed. So Americans deal with America, Europe deals with Europe, Africa deals with Africa. And there was never a in between. And so the leaders at the top were saying, why is this not working? And so they flew me out to India, went to Hyderabad to the call center, and just entered the room. When I started talking to people, I was like, oh, I only work with America. So what about when you have free time? Oh, no, I'm not allowed to work with Europe. But you have free time, you could work with Europe. And then actually the backlog that they were getting was just because people were so siloed. And all we did was change the culture to say, you're actually a global team. Yes, you have different shifts, but when you're on duty, you cover everything. And guess what? Logs went down. There again, that's transformational leadership, which because of the way they were set up, they were not going to succeed at the objective that they wanted, but they didn't realize that the problem was their setup. And so sometimes it's not like they're bad leaders. It's like, we want this to happen. It's not happening. Why is it not happening? And then they bring you in and say, okay, well, you have full carte blanche to go and find out why it's not happening. You discover that actually it's a simple course of cross-training Americans to handle European goals and Europeans to be handle African goals. And then guess what? The problem goes away. And
Yeah.
so and that sometimes is an outside eye looking in.
Totally agree. And I think that's why I love what I do. You are the fresh eyes to a situation and you kind of look at something and go, why are you doing it like that? And there's the general answer is we've always done it that way. And
Exactly.
it's how do you change that perspective and that mindset sometimes,
Yeah.
which leads me on to my next question, Sola. So
Yeah.
a lot of organizations now are trying to scale kind of rapid growth. What's the biggest mistake they might make, those organizations might make when trying to scale people operations quickly?
I mean, it's a good one where we can both give our points of view. But from my point of view, I think what I've discovered that people make a mistake about is the fact that they forget that scaling a business is equal to scaling your people. And so we spend a lot of time about thinking about where the new markets we're going into. And I can use a very good example, and I can say this on air. And when I worked at Deliveroo, where, if you go and read it, you can Google it. And in 2017, Deloitte said Deliveroo grew by 100,000%. So when you're growing as an organization at 100,000% and you're churning your entire workforce, like we had 100% attrition one year, right?
Wow.
How do you manage like crazy growth with attrition? And I think that's where I learned the whole idea around your people are your most valuable assets. It's
Mhm.
their ability to want to grow with you right? It's the ability for you to tell a 22-year-old who's the head of technology, well, she was 23, head of technology, say, okay, here's what we're ramping up, which she doesn't really have the experience, but she has the heart, she has the passion, she has the willingness, she has the grit, she has the resilience. And so then you come in and give her the support that she needs to deliver on that outcome, which we did. I think that's what you learn is that some people have the heart, have the willingness, but they don't have the training. Some people have the training, but they don't have the heart. And so recognizing that human beings will do and respond to this growth you're talking about in different ways. Some people will just walk away. That's not what
Yeah.
I signed up for. And so we had a lot of people in Deliveroo. When Deliveroo started getting bigger, they were like, that's not what I signed up for. I signed up for a small organization. Everybody knows everybody. Now we're getting too big. Now we have multiple locations. Like, that's not what I signed up for. So some people will just say, that's not what I signed up for. And they want to go back and find another smaller company that they can help grow. And actually, when you work in the startup space, you realize that there are some people that they just love baby companies, like where we're all just bootstrapping and it's scrappy and they do really well in those environments. Once you start scaling up and you start having structure, they're like, oh, I'm out of here, go find another small company. And that's actually people's jobs. So I think it's really understanding the times that you're in as an organization. Like when we're talking about scaling, what are we scaling? But to scale anything, you need the people to scale with it. And so
Yeah.
I think the biggest mistake I see people make is forgetting that side and doing everything else but the people preparation.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think kind of echoing what you've just said there, that people are a company's greatest asset. I think I see a lot of times now in the customer experience space where organizations are like, right, we need to improve our customer experience. We need to be the best in the market. That's fantastic. But their people are sitting there going, well, can't we get the same treatment as the customers? Because we're not treated great. So how can we be on the same playing field? And that's really kind of the disappointment where, again, we're going back to the conversation earlier, where people then go, is this job right for me? Should I leave? Should I go somewhere else to a company that I share their values with? And that for me is kind of the knock-on effect of that, a company that's scaling at growth versus those that want to have massive growth, but kind of are only looking in one direction. And
Exactly.
they're kind of, the tunnel vision there doesn't align with everything else that the business needs to do in order to scale. So that's really, really interesting.
And linked to that is this whole idea that I learned again. Like, I'm an avid learner. I'll tell you where I learned it from. So I learned it from Will Shu, CEO of Deliveroo. And one day we were just talking to us and said, look, when you're dealing, because I was in HR, right? When you're dealing with people who are leaving the company, don't see them as employees who are leaving the company. See them as customers who are leaving one organization, but as they leave, you want to keep them as a customer. So don't see them as an employee that started with you on the 1st of February. Now they've left you on the 2nd. They actually, as they walk out the door, you want to keep them as a customer. You want to make sure they don't delete that Deliveroo app. You want to make sure that we are the app of choice 5 years from now, 7 years from now. And that stuck with me, that he didn't see his employees or his riders as just the function they did. He saw them all as potential customers. And
Yeah.
actually now, how many years ago did I leave Deliveroo? 10 years ago, something like that, right? But my number one food app is still Deliveroo. Because when I left the organization, I didn't leave as an employee who was leaving the organization. I was ushered into, hey, lifelong customer, right? And I think that really helps me, even when I help my clients. I'd say, think about your employees as your customer. They stop working for you, whatever you sell. If it's something that they could buy, if it's direct to customer, you want them to walk out and say, okay, I'm leaving the company. It's not the right place for me, but I love the product. I'm going to keep using the product.
Yeah, totally. And I think that, again, it's that advocacy. You want customers to be advocates of the brand, the product, the service, whatever it might be. But you want your people to be doing the same as well. And I love that is still your number one app, because that strikes a chord with everyone, that there are going to be companies that people have worked for where they go, never going to touch that again, and I'm never going to recommend it. I might not openly say it, but I'm not going to be openly saying, yeah, you should use it. Whereas those that kind of can't sing their praises enough, going, I believe it's the best, and here's the list of reasons why.
Yeah.
People get so passionate about it, they could talk about it for absolutely ages, which I absolutely love. I guess for me, going back to a previous point, you said you worked in Germany before
Yes.
Sola.
Yes.
How many countries have you worked in?
40.
Not bad, not bad. So I guess where I'm going there is, you have seen lots of different cultures, lots of different ways of working, interworking, like you said, when you was in Germany.
Yeah.
What do you think those experiences have given you that kind of shape how you help and coach people through their leadership challenges right now?
So I think what it's given me, working in all these different environments, what it's given me is a perspective. Right? It's a different perspective. It's a cultural perspective. It's like when I was working in India, we talk about call centers in India, but we don't know what that means. But when you actually go to a call center and you walk around it, you understand how they live. It's like a 24/7 house. Actually people are, I mean, it's changing now, but it feels like they're kind of trapped in the job, right? They just have to stay there, they live there, they eat there, so that they can get the job done. It gives you a better understanding of people and the variety of people and that's why I talk a lot about culture. And that's why I feel like Emma Meyer's book on Culture Map is such a great book, because without you traveling, you can already start feeling the differences and the nuances. I think that's the real thing, where technology is technology. So even with AI now, so let me kind of segue that and pull it back together. So even with AI, that, yeah, you can deploy a system and you can have agents doing it for you, but ultimately, who's the customer? It's still a person,
Mm.
right? Who's the customer in Germany? Like, what does the German want? What does the German like? And what does on time mean in Germany as opposed to Amsterdam? And just understanding those different nuances has really given me a really good perspective on life and work.
Brilliant. I love that. I think that's amazing. I think that for me, working in different environments, I think every organization's got its own culture. Every team's got its own culture.
Yeah.
But when you really see the big cultural differences country to country, it gives you so much idea of how you can help people. It gives you something different to frame as well.
Yeah. And maybe one more thing to add to that, and you might get there in a second, but is the family dynamics also. So I've got 3 kids. I'm a grandfather also, and so when you're working with organizations, I'm thinking, am I is this organization building products that my kids would use? Is this organization building products that my grandson would use? Right, and it just gives you that multi-generational layer. That what would I buy? What would my kids buy? And what potentially would my grandson be buying? And how
Yeah.
does the world change? And then actually in one person, that's me, you could think of, I don't know what I am, a boomer, whatever it is. And then you have millennials and Gen Z, and then you have the Gen Alpha and Gen Beta. And that in itself also is another cultural kind of dynamic and map of, different, when we talk about who is your ICP, who's your ideal customer profile. And actually sometimes we just profile ourselves as an ideal customer, and then we forget that there are other potential customers that are out there, and the customers that right now your products they're not even born, but you want to make sure that in 10 years time, they're buying that product.
Yeah, it's a really great point. And I think the personal side of things, it helps shapes us who we are as leaders. But like you say, you come at it from a different angle. You could be looking at a product or service, and you really kind of look at that as a parent or as a grandparent,
Yeah.
and rather than as a professional. And I think those life experiences really help give us some grounding sometimes in what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And I really love that the business could be building products or services for people that might not be born yet. And you have to think like that sometimes. Far too often, I'm working with organizations and teams, and I'm asking them, what does the customer want? And they go, well, we think they want this.
Yeah.
And I'm going, hang on, you think? Have you actually gone and asked the question, what do they want? They went, no. And you're like, we're missing a trick here, guys. Rather than just assume, let's go and ask them. Let's go and see how happy they are with the product or service. What could be better? You might find that they have a bit of a moan and just get something off their chest. But then that's when you get to the real things that really matter to them. It would be great if we could get this working.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. You now know what the customer wants. And I think all of these life lessons that come our way sometimes really shape who we are in the workplace. Just to move on to you as an angel investor, what do you look for in a business or a person before you invest?
So I think my what they call investors thesis is fully 100% influenced by the organization that I've worked for. So I used to work for a company called Mass Best Process. And when I worked there, and that's the company that took me to Germany, I realized that they didn't invest in products. They didn't invest in businesses. They invested in people. And so there was like a connection, like, oh, I like David. So whatever David is doing, let's find out what David is doing and then support David. And that led to what McKinsey calls one of the biggest investments of all time, where they invested in a company called Tencent in China, about 20, 30 million. They invested about 15, 20 years ago. That investment is now worth 120, 30 billion, depending on what's happening in the stock
Wow.
market. So 20
Wow.
million to 130 billion. And annually they get, this is all public knowledge, they get 5 billion in dividends every year from that investment. So, but they would say that the reason why that investment went through was because they just liked the guy. They didn't even understand the product, didn't imagine what WeChat could even look like at the time they were investing. But there was something about the chemistry between them and the David of that day that made them think, we like this guy. And whatever he's investing in, whatever he's doing, we want to kind of support. I think that's the same thing for me, that when it comes into the angel investing, I realize that I actually connect with them as people first. So sometimes there are people I'm coaching, then they say, oh, this is my side hustle, this is what I'm doing, I have this company that I'm building. So it becomes an easy thing. I already know you, I know what your life do, and me supporting you by investing is a positive thing. Sometimes they come to me out of the blue, but then we connect and we talk, and I realize, hey, this is your heart, and I'm going to give you just some money to kind of say, hey, I'm supporting that. And then because of that, then I realized that I'm in agri-tech, I'm in food tech, I'm in edutech, I'm in fintech. But that's not because I sat down and said, I want to be in fintech, right? It's more like, I like what you're doing and what is the area? So I probably sometimes go even learn about the area because I like them so much. I'm like, what does this area actually mean? Like, I don't understand it, but I like what they're doing. And so there's a lady that I spent some time with, which was doing functional medicine. I didn't understand what it was. So I actually go and study it. And then I realized, oh, wow, this is amazing. And she had a personal story to go with it. So that's a long way of saying I invest in people, which would be consistent with what I've been saying all day, right? I invest in people rather than products, right?
Yeah.
So, and that has its good side and its bad side. Side is that if you invest in people, but you didn't really understand that person, you might get disappointed, which has happened to me a couple of times, not as many. So I would say 95% of the time it's worked out, but there's always that 5% where you think you know somebody, but actually you get to discover them and you realize, okay, the reason why this is not going to work is because you don't work, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's probably the most thesis I use. Now with AI and now with everything else, right? So there's now new rules. So I invest in people, but that person's going to leverage AI, and you can't come to me with an idea. Ideas don't work anymore. Because if you give me your idea, I can create a product for you by the end of the day by using Lovable or something else, right? So
Yeah.
that's not that. You can't come to me with an empty sheet of paper. I have this amazing idea. It's going to be billions, right? And I'm like, okay, show me. So
Yeah.
that's informing. That's a new 2026, 2026 new layer where it doesn't take you 6 months to build a product now. Couple
Yeah.
of hours.
Yeah. It's so true. It's
Yeah.
so true. So this has been a great conversation. I'm going to finish with one final question before we
Okay.
go into some quick fire questions.
Okay.
If you could give one bit of advice to leaders that feel stuck or they need some help, what would that bit of advice be?
Learn, relearn, learn again. The Adam Grant that wrote a book about think again, right? Think about what you're thinking about. Observe the world around you. Don't be too siloed in your thinking. Observe that we live in a world that changes rapidly. I mean, we're recording this on a day where interesting things have happened over the weekend, right? I don't want to say exactly so people don't date the time we're recording this, but you know what I'm saying? Like in one weekend, the world that you knew could change just because of some world event. And so if that is true, right, then what is the best thing for you as a leader to do is have this ability to be continuously learning and growing and adapting to that change while
Yeah.
holding your core, right? Because it's your core of who you are that doesn't change, but you're willing to learn about the things around you.
Yeah. No,
Hold your core
absolutely.
and learn again.
Brilliant. Love that. So I've got some rapid fire questions for you now.
All right.
So one habit that you won't compromise on.
Reading.
Brilliant. One mistake that's taught you the most.
Not being ready for the next level because you're so deep in the current level.
Interesting. Yeah. And one thing that leaders don't talk about enough.
Their fears.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Sola, it's been an unbelievable conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the
Thank you for your
podcast
time.
today.
Thank you
Brilliant.
for having me. Yeah.
Cheers, Sola.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Stubby Talks Transformation. Real leaders, real change. Follow the show for the next conversation, and we'll see you next time.